Do you remember Mondays, right?
Yes, slightly.
Yeah.
You remember Jeff Maciolik? He used to be the announcer on Mondays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we would write these jokes in, from podcasting from mondays.pop.com. It's Mondays, blah, blah, blah. And then we just have him do this random joke. And one of them was, my hair! There's nothing about my hair. I just wanted to say that. Hey guys, before we start today, I gotta show you this text that I got. It says, "Hi, it's AT&T. Good news. You could be on America's most reliable 5G network."
Ooh.
And the thing says, your unlimited plan now includes access to AT&T 5G. First of all, I don't have an unlimited plan. And I already get 5G on this phone. So I'm at the AT&T store today.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I got this thing, is this real? He looks at it and he goes, nah, that ain't real. Because it's like all you have to do is click here and it's...
And you give your phone to someone else.
Yeah, right. HTTP, not even HTTPS, but HTTP stores.attwrls.com.
Oof.
/ some GUID.
Well, I mean,
right?
Who doesn't do business with AT&T WRLS.com?
ATTWRLS.com.
It's a household name.
It's supposed to be wireless. Yeah.
The W is silent. The W is silent.
So he's like, don't you dare click on that. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's funny. So be careful out there, kids. All right. What are our stories? We have 2 weeks of stories to go through, right?
Yeah.
I know.
We got to move quick. You guys can't dawdle.
Oh, right.
Manage your way through this.
No silly stories about spam text messages from ATT
no
Wireless.
More of them. Oh, our limit is 1. We've met it.
Sorry, guys. I filled the quota. All right, go ahead.
Here's the quick. Patch all your things and don't use the internet. Thanks.
All right, and we're done. We'll see you next week.
Tip your waiters. Try the liver.
But if that's not an option, we'll start.
If you're hungry for more, there's passwords and deep web.
Let's start with Russia.
Russia. All right. So apparently APT 26 or 29, our friends Cozy Bear. We all remember Cozy Bear. We love Cozy Bear.
We've heard of them.
Love's a strong word.
Yeah. I love the mayhem and chaos. So,
you do.
Of course you do.
Sadly, this is an interesting attack. So this is, they're very active in attacking Microsoft 365 accounts.
Right.
So lots of small to medium businesses, lots of large organizations, but small to medium businesses will gravitate to Microsoft Office 365 to house all their email and their users and that sort of stuff. That way, honestly, it's a great move for a small to medium business. You don't need to worry about infrastructure. You don't need to worry about patching your own servers. You don't need to worry about attackers, DDoS, none of that stuff. Microsoft handles all that stuff brilliantly.
They're going to do a better job than you do.
100%.
They're going to do a better job than you do.
Yep.
Is it safe for hackers to use that? I mean, will they be exposing themselves that way?
So for the hackers to use?
Yeah.
Or for the small
this wasn't career criminal advice.
No. This is career advice. Like, should I guess if you're a hacker and you use Microsoft 365 for your hacking.
Yeah, they're it depends on where they are. If they're offshore, it's harder for them to get an account.
Yeah.
If they're onshore in a place that would prosecute them, then they open themselves up for identification.
Right.
So normally, if someone's going to use that, they're either going to use it through stolen credentials, or they're going to get into a victim and then use their account to spin up this infrastructure. It's very unlikely that Cozy Bear's going to have their own account in Azure.
Cozy Bear 365.
Right. What I can tell you though is really nice is if you use these hosted mail services, a lot of them make sure that they're not on blacklists. They make sure that your domain isn't something that's going to get pegged easily as spam, that sort of stuff. So actually, from an attack platform, using these hosted email services aren't bad either. But
attwrls.com.
Yeah, that right? Is probably an example.
It's probably okay.
It's probably Office 360.
So I was talking to somebody who's been in the government for a long time, and one of the things that I believe, and that is starting to become, I don't know, maybe it's not commonly accepted, but Russia was regarded as the superpower of cyber before the Ukraine war, and that just doesn't seem to be the case. And if it was, then Ukraine would have been crushed. The West would be, sobbing in anguish over all the damage they've done.
Right.
And really they were overblown, much like their military was. Doesn't mean they're not dangerous. Doesn't mean they don't have credentials. Don't have this. But you notice all the stories, and the stories make it seem like Russia's everywhere and Russia's doing all the stuff. Right. But the people who are more dangerous are the ones who we're not reading about.
Yeah.
The criminals that you know about have stolen far less money than the criminals you never hear about. and the countries that are doing more damage cyber are the ones that no one's talking about.
Wow.
Well, and that's an interesting point, Patrick, because if you take a look at this particular attack, so if I were an organization and I were setting up my Office 365 for my company, what you're typically going to do is then create user accounts for all of your users.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then your users have to initially log in with a password. Mm-hmm. And they set up their 2FA, their multi-factor authentication, right? The PIN code that comes to your phone or your Google Authenticator or whatever. And they set all that stuff up initially. So, I'm a small business. Let's say we have 50 users in our Active Directory, and I migrate us over to Office 365, and I use Azure AD, and I create those 50 users up there. Well, they haven't all logged in yet. So in between the time that I create them and the time that the users log in, there's probably a default password on all those users, right? Like, welcome to my company, ! Like, terrible password.
Yeah, but if it's Google, I know what Google does. If I manage a domain, a Gmail domain, and when I want to add somebody new, they come up with a 8-character non-random character password. It's not a default password. It's not the same for everyone. But it is not a guessable password.
But now you have to communicate it.
Right, exactly. So if you have 50, 100, 1,000, 10,000 users, they allow you to say, hey, listen, I don't want to use these random passwords. Just set all the users to this default. I'll get them all to log in. What was happening with this attack was literally APT29 just brute forced users and simple passwords. So they were attacking Office 365 with just really simple passwords. So to come back to what Patrick was saying, like
mycat1234.
Yeah, like or company name ! Or whatever, right? So coming back to what Patrick was saying, like we're all like, oh my God, Cozy Bear and APT this and Russia, and then you start to really dig into the finer points of the attack, and it's like anybody with a computer and access to GitHub could have downloaded this script and run it. It wasn't really anything suspicious.
Anybody who's gotten sick of Call of Duty or Fortnite could do this.
So everybody who plays that game?
Well, I mean, there's still a serious threat, and there's still a serious spoiler in the world, but they're not. I mean, one of the things they're losing, as well as massive equipment and reputation militarily, is reputation in the cyber world. When this is all over, they're not going to be as feared, and therefore their protections are down.
Yeah.
Hey, Patrick, what would you say is the equivalent of the cyber nuke? I only say that because a lot of people are concerned about Russia because they have nukes. But in the digital world, back
in the day, it was Stuxnet,
maybe.
But back in the day, it was Stuxnet. Maybe? No, I mean, we figured out how to do DDoS. Things that the nuke is something we can't, like a Robert, the RTM worm, the Robert Tappan Morris worm. If that were to hit and that were to propagate something like that now, because we're not, something new is really what it is. So I don't think I can adequately describe it. Maybe something that went fundamental to all the operating systems and gave you the ability to black things out so you could take down infrastructure. I don't think anybody has it. No. And if they do, I think the bad guys, who I consider the bad guys, you can figure who that is. If they had it, I think they'd be using it.
That makes sense.
All right. Well, 10 minutes in, we're only through one story, so it's going to be a long one.
No, we got it. We can roll through the rest of them.
Speaking of DDoS.
Yeah, it was.
If you move into our next story is about WordPress, and this one's interesting. So
nice segue.
We love WordPress, and WordPress is great, and WordPress configured properly and patched constantly is a really good platform.
Okay, for a second I thought it was opposite day, and you were just saying things that weren't true.
No.
Wait a minute. Is this opposite day?
Yeah.
I can never remember.
Yeah, then Rust is great. Woo! No. Configured properly. Most systems configured properly are actually reasonably secure. So if you configure your WordPress and you patch your WordPress, then you're not gonna break into a lot of, unless you have terrible passwords.
Well, or you use a lot of add-ins.
So in this particular case, for misconfigured WordPress sites, the best sort of bang for the buck when the hacker breaks into these sites is what they've been doing now is instead of saying, haha, I own this site and then defacing it or doing whatever, they're now rolling out in the theme of the site a JavaScript pop-up that pops up on the screen and says, hey, Cloudflare needs your help to protect against DDoS. Can you click here and download this software and run it on your computer, and it will help prevent DDoS?
Wow.
So first off,
that's brought to you by AT&T WSDL.com.
WRLS.
It is.
Some random number of letters. Oh, that's horrible.
So needless to say, your computer is never going to help prevent any DDoS. It can participate in a DDoS, but it's not out there routing internet traffic. So there's no way you're ever going to help. Secondly, if anybody ever asks you to click on something and then download an ISO, which is an image of a CD-ROM, and then right-click on it and mount it, and then go in there and find the zip and extract it, and then run an executable, you're doing the wrong thing. And that's exactly what was happening.
You're 3 steps into doing the wrong thing.
Right, exactly. So the moral of the story here is if something feels a little bit weird, if you've never been asked to protect the internet with your computer, why would someone start doing it now?
Let's address this for a second, and then we'll move on. There are things you can do that help these things. There's folding proteins. There's things, but you have to research them. You have to look up and see who's behind them. You have to look at, whether there's news articles that cover them. There's ways you can get involved to help the world without being a cynic, but you need to do a little research. That's the message here.
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about, Patrick.
Yeah,
you have to always be cynical. Always be vigilant. So that's it. If it is your WordPress site that got breached, shame on you. Patch and use better passwords. And B, if you're the user using that site, please don't go through the arduous process of installing malware.
So if you have a WordPress site, how do you know if this applies to you? Well, what would you have done to make sure you're configured correctly? Would you get a pen test once a year?
So pen tests are awesome.
Who are you going to call?
You should have someone.
Pen testers.
You guys.
How did I miss that, Pat?
You guys.
I don't know. No, but what I want to start doing is do more of the, how do I know if this is a problem I need to deal with and what would I do about it?
Yeah.
So I think if you have a WordPress site, you do need to check regularly, not just once, regularly, that it's configured correctly. And a vulnerability assessment or a pen test or something would be helpful here, unless you're an expert already.
Sure.
Dwayne, did you know that Patrick's parents were going to name him Rick when he was born?
I did not know
that. Rick. But then they needed to patch things, and they needed somebody to patch things, so he patched Rick.
Carl,
Better late than never, I say.
Yeah. Better never.
Really
better than late. Yeah, exactly. Moving on from that.
Please move on.
Please. So this is a notification from the government, but also from Apple. There were 2 very major exploits discovered recently that have actually been seen in the wild for iOS. So for everybody who's running an iPhone right now, there were 2 0-day exploits. One of them is a WebKit exploit. So part of this WebKit exploit, which is part of Apple's browser engine and primarily resides in Safari, this vulnerability can lead to execution of arbitrary code. So one exploit is running anything that they want on your phone just by using the browser. You open your phone, You browse to a website, and boom, they're able to run whatever code they want on your phone.
All right, so this is a situation where we need to give some practical advice to the listener. So I have an iPhone, and I installed Google Chrome.
Yes.
But there's nothing that tells me that Google Chrome is the default browser, because anytime I click on a link that somebody texts me, it opens in Safari.
Exactly.
Can you make Google Chrome your default browser on an iPhone?
Okay, so that's a great question, because every time I click on a link and it opens it in Safari, I get frustrated and go, oh, I need to figure out if I can change that. And then I don't. And then I just go over to Chrome. So I'm sure there is. I just haven't taken the time to figure it out yet.
Well, let's find out right now.
Yeah,
first you have to do it. Go ahead,
first
talk
you have
amongst
to,
yourselves.
So while
you
you're
have to
figuring that
find
out,
the rings of Aragorn, and then
yeah,
you have to do a quest.
right, a quest to Mount Doom. So needless to say, there's one exploit which is with the WebKit, which is Safari browser, which gives the ability for arbitrary code execution. There's another exploit as well. This vulnerability is an operating system kernel exploit that abuses execution of arbitrary code at the highest level. So it will bypass all protections on the phone.
Now, these are really dangerous because a lot of times when you get a remote code execution, it's low privileged.
Yes.
These sound like they're already high privilege, which means they're not.
These are the highest privilege. Yes.
Right. The thing that makes hacking hard in most cases is you get on the system and you have no privileges, like breaking into a closet that's locked from the outside.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. But if you break into the control room of the nuclear reactor, you're already in business. So this is a one-stop shop, and which is what makes it such a big deal.
Now, I've talked to a lot of people about this in the last week since it came out. Not even a week since it came out. And everybody that I talk to who are in my inner circle always are like, oh, you know what? I auto-patch. My phone auto-patches every night. Yeah, I don't even need to worry about it.
That's good.
These patches don't seem to auto-patch.
No, you have to do them yourself.
So like my phone auto-patches, and I had to go in and forcibly say, update to this version.
All right, look.
So keep in mind, oh, there you go. Right there, default web browsing app.
All right, I found default web browser app. So if you install Chrome, you go to settings and you scroll down to where all your apps are, and you find Chrome. It's under Chrome, not Google Chrome. You go to the next screen. Down at the bottom of the page, it says default browser app, and you can switch it to Chrome.
After you've slayed the dragon.
Yeah. And then there's another.
Safe.
Yeah. There's another one that says allow cross website tracking. Turn it off.
That should always be on.
That should always be off.
Always be off. Any ad IDs, that sort of stuff should always be off.
So there you go.
So yeah, so two suggestions here. One, even if you believe you're auto patching on your iOS devices, go into settings, go to software, and make sure it is up to date. Because these are critical exploits.
In God we trust, everyone else we double check.
Mm-hmm. So
including ourselves.
Make sure it's updated.
I check on a weekly basis. I check to see if there's an update, and I run it on all the iOS devices in my life, iPads, family iPads, family phones, etc.
Yep,
I like it.
Cool.
That's it. What's next?
All right, next on our list.
Rocking.
Okay, all right. Next on our list is TikTok.
We're
going to get a lot of hate mail for this.
Before you even say uninstall TikTok, which is the end of this segment, we're going to say that.
Which is the end of this segment.
That's pretty much it. I got to tell you that Kelly, my wife, was interested in us putting little promo videos on TikTok. And I'm so glad that we didn't, because... All right, now that frames the story, doesn't it?
It does. Well, Carl and I were sitting down and we were talking. He's like, "Hey, Dwayne, I have this really great idea. I was talking to my wife. We should absolutely do little TikTok videos, whatever." And I was like, "Hey, I have this story we just put into the security this week about how nobody should ever use TikTok." And he was like, "Okay, let's skip that. Let's not do that."
Wow.
So TikTok researcher Felix Kraus has dug through TikTok, and we all know TikTok is a China-owned platform, right? So,
yeah.
So, for example, as a security expert in the United States, when my kids were like, "Hey, I want a TikTok," and I was like, "Hey, no, No, you can't have TikTok. I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow it on my network here at home.
Right.
But Felix Krause has dug into the TikTok platform and into the app. And Krause wrote that the monitoring is similar to keylogging. So which
is bad.
Right. According to this article in the Washington Times, TikTok can monitor users' keystrokes and could collect passwords, credit card information, etc. Anything you type on your phone, there's in the TikTok app, there's the ability just for it to grab that information and send it along to the servers.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what? If you can't trust the Chinese government, who can you trust?
I know. They're so trustworthy. I am going to name this show Uninstall TikTok Now. How about that?
I like it.
You think that will work?
I think it will.
And our viewership demographic just shifted 10 years older.
So, and this has been, if you haven't seen this article about TikTok yet, it was on CNN. David Kennedy, who's CEO of Bit Defense Systems, brilliant guy in cybersecurity, was like, "Hey, I don't let my kids have it, and yeah, you should absolutely rip it off any device you have right now." So yeah, I would highly suggest if you have TikTok,
my kids are too old.
Yeah, your kids are too old.
My kids are already too old.
They're
for
out
that.
of the demographic
in their 30s.
Oh my! There's nothing more to say, really. I mean, it's just uninstall it.
Well, it does. The one last thing to say is that who makes the software that you trust matters. Mm-hmm. If you trust the vendor, by all means. If you personally don't have a problem with this, if you don't think you have anything to hide, you're wrong. But you can believe that if you want.
Right.
But if you don't like Microsoft, don't use Windows. Don't use their products. If you don't like Google, you vote with your feet. But you have to at least be informed about what you're giving up. In many cases, people already have a problem with the lack of privacy. But when they have the ability to do key logging across the entire device, really, that's a problem. That's too much.
That's a problem.
Right.
Oh boy. So isn't that ironic that we were going to record some little promo videos to put on TikTok? Hey, you concerned about security? Check out security this week. Oh, by the way, you want to uninstall this app immediately.
There are many
Maybe that's
China
what we
hawks.
can open with on the TikTok video.
That's it.
Uninstall this.
There are many China hawks who still have to buy Chinese gear, and there are things where you can't buy them anywhere else. TikTok is a platform that's very popular. And if you want to be on that platform, it makes sense in some cases for advertising. If people choose to do that, I don't think you're contributing to their delinquency. They've chosen to be on that platform.
Yeah.
Though I wonder what they'd say if this clip was what we put on TikTok.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's make a clip for TikTok.
The anti TikTok clip. I like it.
Yeah. Right. Uninstall this app right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next story. Hackers target hotel and travel companies with fake reservations. You know, I knew this was happening because the last time I went to a hotel and they said, "Do you have a reservation?" I said, "Yes, but I booked a room anyway." And that is a dad joke like you've never, ever heard.
I think our content to jokes is going up dangerously, is going down dangerously.
That's what makes security palatable. Otherwise, it's freaking boring.
Right?
It is, yeah. That's true.
You know? Except, hey, uninstall this app or else, bad things will happen to you. With shock
Feels
value.
like studying for the CSSP.
Yeah,
whatever that is.
Yeah, so
all right.
The interesting thing about this is, a hacker group tracked as TA558, I don't know, according to Proofpoint. And they've been tracking them for a while.
I never heard of them.
If I remember correctly, I don't think they're attributed to a nation state yet. So, they don't get the fancy names like Fancy Bear until they're attributed to a nation state, and then they get the wonder names. So, needless to say, what we're seeing is a rise in targeted attacks, not at the users registering for hotels and flights and VRBOs and that sort of stuff. But what we're seeing is attacks against those companies. So, massive hotel chains and that sort of stuff are starting to see an uptick in attacks in hospitality. And I know sometimes that can be nation state related. Like Patrick's talked about the Marriott breach, right?
Yeah.
at one point, and that, the assumption is right now that was probably a nation state attack. So could this be a nation state trying to glean information on travel comings and goings? Maybe.
So one indicator would be whether the data ends up on the dark web, because the Marriott breach, I don't believe ever did. And
I haven't seen it.
Some believe that it has the same heritage as TikTok.
What?
Yeah, it's widely speculated that China's the one that did it, because they were trying to locate intelligence assets from around the world.
Got it. So it could be be a spin of a bat, but
interesting.
Anyhow,
doesn't affect users. It's just something that's going on.
I would be what's interesting about this attack, though, is the path to exploitation is the same as what we were typically seeing, which we're warning users about. An email coming in with some sort of weird attachment to an ISO, which is an image of a CD-ROM, which you then have to mount, and then you have to extract a zipped file, and then from there you need to run something. If you're ever following that process, you're 3 steps into the wrong place, like Patrick said.
I need to tell you guys this. I just got an email from LastPass, and it said, "Dear valued customer, we're writing to inform you that we recently detected some unusual activity within portions of the LastPass development environment. So we have determined that an unauthorized party gained access to portions of the LastPass development environment through a single compromised developer account and took portions of source code and some proprietary LastPass technical information.
Wow.
We have no evidence that this incident involved any access to customer data or encrypted password vaults. Our products and services are operating normally. In response, we immediately initiated an investigation, deployed containment and mitigation measures, and engaged a leading cybersecurity and forensics firm. While our investigation is ongoing, we have achieved a state of containment, implemented additional enhanced security measures, and see no further evidence of unauthorized activity. Based on what we've learned and implemented, we're evaluating further mitigation techniques to strengthen our environment. We'll continue, yada, yada. We've set up a blog post dedicated to providing more information, and I will post a link to that in the show notes.
The chief thing that they're doing as part of the mitigation, other than figuring out how they got in and how to prevent it, is they're going to have to do a code review of all the code that went out to make sure there's no 0 days that they didn't know about.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big part of this, because if they stole 100,000 lines of code, which I have no inside knowledge about how much code, they either need to swap that code out or they need to make sure there's nothing somebody can't, figure out how to do from looking at that code.
Right. Yeah. So it just happened while we were recording the show. So I figured it'll probably make next week's show. But
why didn't you say
what the heck?
Extra?
I don't have an extra.
Hear all about it.
I don't have that sound effect. But
what?
Yeah.
Well, you're a mimic. You could do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Hyundai.
Schneier. Bruce Schneier is a luminary in the security field.
Yeah.
Don't always agree with him, but usually do. And he says that Hyundai's using example crypto keys in the infotainment system. But one of the first comments is very interesting.
What does that
comments
mean?
like, nothing wrong here.
So
cryptotainment? Did you say cryptotainment?
No, infotainment.
Like, that's what they call those little units. That
DVD players.
GPS and DVD and whatever in the cars.
That's what we are, right? Infotainment?
We are infotainment. 100%.
Or info dad joke.
So one of the I think what's interesting here is not just the story, but the comments, because one of the first comment says, nothing wrong here. This is as it should be. People should never be locked out of editing their own system.
Yeah.
And the manufacturer shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I think that's probably a sentiment shared by a lot of people, but I think there's a lot more at stake here, in that if that's the case and I can get a USB into the computer,
right,
into the car, I might be able to do some really bad things with it.
Absolutely.
And so I think maybe letting the user set the key would be one thing.
Yeah.
But having it be known to the world, very bad.
Yes, agreed 100%. If you want to allow an open source-ish platform where you can update your own car's, infotainment system, awesome. I'm all for that, honestly. But I agree with Patrick. You need a process of, okay, go to the dealership and you can get the keys or whatever, or, I can type these things, a password in on my screen that I set when I bought the car, and then I can reset it. but having it just be known to the world. And this is kind of goofy because it's literally the example keys that are used in the RFC for the RSA encryption they're using. So literally for the encryption they're using, on the page that RSA describes how to use encryption, they said, for example, let's say we have this key. And the Hyundai developers went, wow, let's use that key. As opposed to, so as a developer, listen, if you're reading code examples from other sites, probably not best to use crypto keys that you see in the example.
I think that was Hyundai's let the interns do the security this day.
They just went out there like, well, it's on the RSA site. It's got to be secure. Copy, paste, done.
I wouldn't be surprised, actually. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't know what to change to make it something else.
Yeah, but it's crazy.
Honestly, it would still be bad even if it was one other thing, but it's the same on all cars.
Yep, 100%.
Because then all you need is one of the cars to figure it out. So it should be customized.
Right.
Yeah.
So what can you do, dear user? Not much. Know that if you see some shady person sitting in your passenger seat of your car trying to jam a USB into the USB slot of your infotainment system, slap them and kick them out of the car. That's pretty much it.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Next. What is this? Ether LED? What is that?
I love these things. Okay, so constantly, everybody wants to be the James Bond of internet computing. God. And constantly we're always getting the, well, how would I exfil data out of an organization?
These things make my brain bleed.
And some of them have been, honestly, really neat and innovative. At one point, there was one person who found out how to access a RAM chip inside the computer at a frequency that the RAM chip vibrated, if you will, into the radio spectrum. So you could exfil data that way, and you were like, wow, that's pretty crazy. And then you realized, it was only like 1 bit of data a year. It was the stupidest thing ever. This is another interesting data exfil. What if you could hack into a network card, and on the back of the network card, there's those little lights that flash as data goes by? And what if you could get the lights, instead of flashing when data goes by, they would flash in Morse code for every bit that goes by?
Oh my God.
That's what this is. This is somebody going.
So this reminds me of the story that I talked about in the last show, where somebody could listen in on a conversation by observing the dimming of the light in response to the sound.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, guess what makes those lights blink the way they do? Data.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So if you could make those lights blink other than on when data's going and off when it's not, and you could make it blink in a way that you could then determine what data was being passed, I get it. I do.
How can that possibly be?
But you need a way to visualize it.
There's no way.
You need a way to see it.
Do you know how fast of a Morse code? Yeah, exactly. You would have to have a high-speed digital camera focused on that port to be able to see how quickly that light was blinking.
A high speed, it'd have to be the speed of light.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
It would be insane. So if you were to slow the port down, maybe. But honestly, it's an interesting thought experiment. And, they went through and did that. But
well, wait a minute. Are they talking about that, or are they, maybe I misunderstood. Are they talking about actually transmitting the data via Morse code in real time, or are they talking about hijacking the LED so that it doesn't reflect the data and instead reflects data exfil that you choose? So, for example, let's say there's a 1K file on the hard drive, not on the network, and I've just figured out a way to get the server to tell me if I can view that port. Maybe it's facing a window, so that I can get the Morse code. In other words, is it like an exfil? So it has nothing to do with the data over the port.
No, it can be. So that would be that's the smart sort of extension. Yeah, that's the smart extension of the implementation, right? They say, hey, listen, we can do Morse code for all the data going over it, or the driver can go search out the drive and find Bitcoin keys, and just constantly, when it finds a Bitcoin key for a wallet, it just transmits the Morse code for that key over and over and over and over and over again for infinity. And you get to record it whenever you can record it. So, the guy goes home, shuts the lights out in the office, and all you see is the blinking of the LED from across the street. And maybe, then you could decode it.
This blog post goes into excruciating technical detail here. Mm-hmm. And they have a table that with the time it takes to leak various types of information. So for passwords, it's 100 bits. Yeah. And it's for single color, it takes 1.5 minutes. So they slow it down, obviously. For two colors, 0.7 minutes. So 100 bits. So they're slowing down the Morse code so that it can be read.
Yeah. So it's not reading the port in real time and leaking everything that goes through the network.
No, they're hacking the lights so that
and taking it over.
If it's a password, they're hacking it, and then for the next 0.7 minutes with two colors, they can Morse code the password.
And it's completely decoupled with what the network is doing.
Wow.
It it no longer reflects network activity.
That's crazy.
But who would know?
Yeah. I'm never staring at the back end of my computer to see how it's flashing. I don't know.
That is crazy and cool and a little bit evil. Just like Dwayne.
It's awesome.
I was teaching a class. I gotta tell this story. I was teaching a class back in the 90s, early to mid 90s. And I was teaching a class on SQL Server, and one of my students got a call, jumped up and ran out of the room on a Tuesday. And he didn't come back till Thursday. And what had happened is somebody had broken the windows in his data center and stolen 16 servers. This was in a day when people had Windows in their data centers.
Wait a minute. Now we run Linux, right? No,
right.
I think you mean Windows on the window on the wall that you can break.
His data center was on the second floor, and it had Windows, not the operating system.
Yeah, Windows.
And somebody put a ladder up, broke those windows. Actually, it might have been a Monday afternoon because he found out, and they stole 16.
Well,
physically
we used to
stole
say
16
that
other servers.
the first level of security is secure the room.
Yes. Yep, physical security.
We don't see...
The easiest way to steal something is to walk in and take it.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, crazy. All right, so let's talk about Hikvision cameras. That's HIK Vision. Over 80,000 exploitable Hikvision cameras exposed online. Ooh, do they give an address where you can go look at them?
They do.
Can you use them to read Morse code from an LED?
Probably.
They're probably just empty parking lots.
Just so that you guys know, Hikvision cameras have actually been on the I don't want to say illegal list, but the you can't buy them in the United States list for a while. So these cameras, I doubt you'll run into these in any organizations in the United States, but if you do, because they were purchased before they were, sanctioned. The devices need to be updated. There's a remote code execution vulnerability that does not require any authentication, and you can grab control of these cameras and do whatever you want. Wow. Right now, access to these cameras is being sold on the dark web.
Wow.
Oddly enough,
I think Hikvision is owned by Hollywood to make movies more credible.
Maybe. But that, oddly enough, even though they've been sanctioned in the United States and they're not supposed to be used here, statistically, I think this article says there's still about 10,000 of them kicking around.
Does Showdown have a score for them? Would they show up on Showdown?
Yeah, they do show up on Showdown. I wasn't going to give the hacker advice, but if you are looking for these cameras and don't want to pay for it, you could just go to showdown.io, and there is a search for these types of cameras. You'll find them and be able to run the exploit. And we have the code for you that we will post on our site.
It's Criminal Career Advice.
Yes, criminals, why pay for those expensive cameras when you could just steal them by searching on the internet?
Can you change that statement to just not say we?
So this is a proof of concept, right?
Yes.
Python application for hacking these cameras, right?
Yes, and so that we don't get sued, this is a proof of concept that we'll check to see if they are vulnerable.
Okay.
And then maybe exploit.
No warranties on this code. We don't know what it does. We weren't here. If we were here, we wouldn't have noticed anything.
Mm-hmm.
Don't shoot the messenger, kids.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't hack the messenger either. But it's a good example. Actually, this is a good this is a good example of what it would look like if you were to want to hack one of these things.
Right.
So we're just showing examples of things.
Training, purely training.
Mm-hmm.
And then on to our last story, gentlemen.
Near and dear to my heart.
Right? Carl, have you ever heard of Plex? Do you use Plex?
I've heard of Plex, but I don't use it.
Plex.
It's a streaming music platform, right?
It is much, much more than that. It is a streaming media platform. So let's say you had...
It's your own Netflix.
Yeah, let's say you had all of the X-Files on DVD. And you said, you know what? I don't want to ever, pop a DVD in. Where would I find a DVD player? But if you ripped them all down to a format you could view them in, you could put them on Plex. And Plex does great things. It pulls up like posters and keeps track of where you were. It's literally your own personal Netflix.
Typically, it's you run it on a home server, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even a Synology. Synology has the Plex software.
Yeah.
So it's a really great piece of software that does that. They were breached, and usernames and passwords there were taken. The passwords, however, were all encrypted or hashed. So there was no leak of personal data there. But Plex has done the right thing here. As soon as they noticed the breach, within hours, they reset everybody's passwords and let everybody know that they should go out and change their password and make sure that their account doesn't have any devices added to it. It shouldn't. So I think that was pretty awesome. Yeah.
That was nice of them.
I love examples like this where companies aren't more concerned about their brand than their customer, right? You know what? Brand be damned. I want my customers to be secure. So if something happens, God forbid, somebody breaches into the sites, I'm going to let all my customers know stuff needs to change immediately. And this was blasted out everywhere. I've seen this article on, 10 or 15 different sites. So this
great.
This was picked up by a lot of people.
Responsible.
Yep.
Yeah, they did the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, that's our last 2 weeks worth of stories for you, and we'll be back next week. And
sorry about last week.
TikTok right now.
Uninstall it.
Uninstall it. All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.